Hello and welcome to the Third Sector podcast. I'm Emily Harle.
And I'm Lucinda Rouse. And in this episode, we'll be reflecting on a recent interview with the Chief Executive of Muscular Dystrophy UK, Andy Fletcher. MD UK is a charity that supports the 110,000 people in the UK with muscle wasting and weakening conditions. It also funds research into these conditions to better understand them and work towards new treatments. Emily, you went out to meet Andy recently. There will be a full written feature based on your discussion on the Third Sector website very shortly. Why was now a good time to be interviewing him?
So the charity recently launched a new 10-year strategy just last month, which included plans to nearly double its income to 15 million by 2035. It also included other bold priorities such as transforming diagnoses and the aim to reach everyone with support at the point of being diagnosed with a muscle wasting condition. Andy Fletcher, who is only a year into post, described the strategy as the charity's boldest yet, and I asked him about the intentions behind the strategy.
What I wanted to do was bring some strategic focus. One of the things that came when I arrived at MD UK, it's a great organisation with great people doing great work. But what we lack, I think, is a little bit of strategic focus on what are the things we're trying to change for people with muscle wasting conditions. And that's behind the new strategy, is to focus all our activity. So, not just look at it in silos of, research and services and advocacy, but actually think if we're trying to change how people receive their diagnosis, if we're trying to change, how people access treatment, what are the things that we can contribute to that with our research? What can we contribute to that with our support and on our advocacy? So there is always a tension between, the balance of those things, but I think we are, investing now more in service development without impacting our investment in research, which is a good position to be in.
So it was really interesting to hear from Andy about the need to balance both research and support, a tension that the charity, alongside many others, needs to find a balance in. The two are also given very much equal priority within the strategy, and if listeners are interested in hearing a bit more about what the strategy looks like, we do have a news piece on Third Sector's website.
Yeah, it is an interesting move. Two very distinct operations, obviously the research and then the service delivery itself. And Andy doesn't have a wealth of previous experience in research-focused charities, does he? Because he previously worked in the hospice sector.
Yes, that's right. He led Together for Short Lives as chief executive for 6.5 years before joining MD UK. And before that, he was chief executive of Longfield Hospice. So he did admit to me that research was a slightly newer field for him, but he's really keen to continue to build on that research work alongside the support arm of the charity. And to do that, well, the charity's income really needs to grow. So as I said, the charity's new strategy includes an ambition to grow its income to 15 million by 2035. So currently the charity's income sits at about 7.9 million. So this is really no small task. I asked Andy how the charity plans to meet this target.
There's some real potential within our existing fundraising to grow. I think there's definite potential in all of our areas. This week was our Town and Gown run in Cambridge. We run one in Cambridge, one in Oxford. They're exclusive events. 10,000 people run across both of those this year. That's the most ever. And we've got plans to continue to grow that. So trying to bring some of the kind of commercial thinking around how we grow those mass participation events is really key. We want to develop a unique kind of all accessible mass participation event, a movement event for everybody, particularly those in our community with limited mobility. But I think right across all our income streams is definite with investment and focus is definite headroom for growth. I think secondly, we want to kind of deliver sort of longer term strategic programs that appeal to strategic funders. So we've got, as you say in the strategy, a real ambition to reach every person, to develop in reach into neuromuscular centres, to grow the next generation of researchers. And all of those are kind of long-term strategic projects, which we're hoping will resonate more with the larger strategic funders. I think thirdly, we really want to reach more people. We know that if we reach more people, generally the people that give money to MD UK are people affected by conditions in some way. So we know that the more people that we reach and tell our stories to and hopefully grow our income through growing our reach, I think there's something for me about the culture of the organisation. I think we are a good fundraising organisation, but we're not a great fundraising organisation yet. I think there's work we can do to really put the donor at some of the centre of our thinking in terms of the design and development of our work, and make that a kind of all organisation culture about growing fundraising.
It's actually really refreshing to hear a chief executive say, we're a good fundraising organisation, but we can be better. And the idea about creating a culture of fundraising is really, really interesting to me. It seems that the plan for MD UK is to truly embed this fundraising ambition across all of the charities departments. And Andy actually did speak to me a little bit about making sure that the entire organisation is working cohesively, and it's not just advocacy working in silo, fundraising working in silo. It's an ambition that the entire charity needs to share.
Yeah, and interesting as well hearing about his desire to grow the mass participation events, not only for the scale of it, but also to better engage members of the muscular dystrophy community and making these events more inclusive for people who are living with some of those conditions, but also the different ways that he is looking to engage different types of funders. And as he said, putting the donor at the centre of all of this, strategic proposition for strategic funders, but then more on the side of mass participation, really the scale. And as you say, the more people that you reach with your story, with your aims, with your ambitions, in the hope of generating more income and almost double as their new target is.
And that idea of scale also lends itself to the charity's communications as well. They're trying to reach more people and grow their prevalence as an organisation and their brand awareness. Another way to do that is by improving your communications. And what Andy told me is that MD UK is often quite cautious in its comms. But actually, as an organisation that spans 60 different muscle wasting conditions, it has a real job to do when it comes to sharing those experiences in a really powerful way. That means centering those experiences in its fundraising messaging to help with that income ambition, but also within its advocacy work. And Andy spoke to me a little bit more about that too.
We've tried to develop a new strategy which focuses on changing some of those things for people with muscle wasting conditions. And also, I think, a sense that we could be braver in the way we spoke up for them. I think often, we can be a bit cautious in our advocacy and in our communication around the needs of people. And actually, the more I've spent time over this year and more I've realised that actually people in the community want us to speak up for them. They want us to share their story. They want us to advocate on their behalf. And so that kind of being a bit braver about the way we share stories and we talk about what the realities of living with these conditions looks like, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, is something the community really wants us to do. So we're determined to address that.
It's interesting to hear about the caution that the charity previously felt about sharing stories of people living with muscle wasting conditions, because they're not really talked about in the wider space either, are they? They're not well-known conditions like cancer, for example. So it's refreshing to hear that they are planning to really ramp up their advocacy work. Did Andy give you much insight or hints as to how they're going to do that?
Yes, that was my first question after he said that. And this is what he said.
So I think being braver means a couple of things to me. One, it means being really ambitious for the community, which is why we've launched a 10-year strategy. It's not because, we think 10's a nice round number. It's because we want a big and bold and brave vision, because we feel that's what our community deserves. And that's what they told us they wanted. And so that's why we set this kind of 10-year ambition, which has some, really bold objectives in it. I think in advocacy terms, it means mobilising people, giving people the opportunity to contribute to our campaigning work, our advocacy. It means shouting a bit louder around some of the things that impact people with muscle wasting conditions. So benefit reform being a real obvious one in current times. But, actually, how do we help people access an inaccessible world?
So he's spoken about centering lived experience in the charity's communications. But what did he say about embedding lived experience in the organisation's own work and service delivery?
I asked Andy that very question. He said that it is a fundamental aspect of any third sector organisation to embed lived experience in its work, and that it's really important for charities to actually challenge themselves and ask if they're reaching enough people, firstly, but also whether they're embedding lived experience from different communities, whether they're asking the right people for their input and centering those experiences. I asked him how MD UK does this currently and how it plans to grow this work.
We have a really strong lay research panel of people with lived experience to help shape our research. So that's a really powerful voice. We want to strengthen that in terms of making sure that our research not only delivers from a clinical point of view and from an academic point of view, but also is shaped by people with lived experience. And we're looking at how do we obviously embed that within our kind of governance structure and our opportunities to work and volunteer. So part of our new strategy relies really heavily on growing volunteering within the organisation, opportunities to participate and benefit from some of those opportunities that come with volunteering. So trying to embed lived experience, not just in the kind of governance structures, which I think MD UK is really strong on, but also participating in all aspects of our work, whether that's research, whether that's support, or whether that's campaigning. I mean, I think it's a fundamental aspect of any third sector organisation. There's some really good organisations that do it well, I think, and I think we're aspiring to be that kind of organisation. I think we've got some work to do. I think, like many organisations, we can fall into engaging and communicating with the same audience. So it's really important for us that we challenge ourselves to say, are we reaching enough people? Are we embedding enough lived experience from different communities, for example?
So in terms of where the charity is very strong on embedding this lived experience, that governance element is a place where the charity really thrives. But it was interesting that Andy said part of their new strategy going forward and their focus will be making sure that those volunteering opportunities are there for the people they support, which is something that I don't hear charities speaking an awful lot about.
No, and almost making it part of their service provision, talking about the benefits that would come with volunteering for their very service users. Yeah, a very interesting take on it.
Absolutely. And another thing that Andy said was that the charity isn't at the moment as well known as it needs to be among those with muscle wasting conditions. So the people that it supports, its community. Andy did admit that there's work that needs to be done in terms of that awareness, particularly within communities who are more disadvantaged, might not necessarily be hearing of the charity or its work. So that volunteering element, if they can really get the word out there on that can really help boost that awareness as well, alongside all of the extra comms work and fundraising marketing work that they're planning to do.
And that's also really important because, as he mentioned earlier, they're trying to get the word out about their existence and the support that they provide to people at the point of their diagnosis. So yeah, it all sounds extremely worthwhile and a very exciting time for the charity ahead.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed hearing about Emily's interview with Andy Fletcher, and you can read the full write-up of their conversation under the Features tab on the Third Sector website. From all of us at Third Sector, thank you so much for listening. Our producer is Nav Pal.